Hi there, everyone, and welcome to Paper Wishes weekly webisodes. I'm Sara Newman, and I'm so happy you're joining me for this episode of Saturday with Sara. Today, I'm excited to show you a gorgeous collection from our friends at Stamperia called House of Roses. We have pattern papers, 2 sets of rub-ons, and a pack of chipboard die cuts. So let's take a closer look, and we can begin with the 8x8 paper pack. I'll move aside some of these other elements just for now, and we can flip through our paper collection. So here we have 10 double-facing sheets with a beautiful and elegant rose theme. You'll also find some cutout elements. I really love these from Stamperia. You'll see on one side some really nice focal illustrations. On the other side, you've got a beautiful border or some corner treatments, but you've also got some room to add your own personal touch. Now, true to Stamperia style, you'll have some all-over pages with some faux texture. This is gorgeous. You will also have some really nice collage effects here, like the script, which is layered on top of that faux wood. So you're able to create projects that have a lot of depth and dimension just already in the patterned background papers. Now, as I'm flipping through, you can notice a really nice soft color palette here with the pink and the green. Here's some more cutouts, and then 2 really beautiful all over background papers. So everything is really nicely coordinated with this set, which I absolutely love. Then to go along, we have 2 sets of rub-ons. We have the House of Roses elements and Writing and Roses. And you can see they're just absolutely stunning. Again, you can incorporate these with the paper pack with some of those cutouts. You can also use them directly on pattern paper or on solid cardstock. They do include instructions, but we will do a demo so that you can see step by step just how easy those are to apply. And then finally, our package of chipboard die cuts, over 35. And you can see here, I've put them onto 2 pieces of cardstock just so that you get a sense of the size and the variety of these designs. So some corner elements, nice large focal pieces on here too, as well as some smaller pieces that you can use to build up your own designs. So as you can see, everything is beautifully coordinated. Of course, it is Stamperia, and it's going to be really easy to create your own cards with a gorgeous rose theme. I'm so glad that you're here today, and I'm excited to explore the creative possibilities with you. So come play with us. The first card I want to show you is a really simple design with a patterned paper background, one of the cutouts as the basis for the focal, decorated with some layered rub-ons, and overlapping is the table chipboard piece and a butterfly. So let's take a look at how to put this together, working from the bottom up. Now first, I've covered my card front with green cardstock, and this comes from the Fairy Garden cardstock collection from hot off the press, and this is the green that I'm using. But I'm going to show you the pattern paper that I'm working with here too. And you can see that there are a lot of different colors that I could have used in combination with this pattern paper. So this is the set that I'm using for cardstock throughout today's webisode. It's got lots of beautiful colors that just happen to match perfectly with our pattern paper today. And I think that green goes really nicely, not only with the little sprigs of flowers and the leaves here in the background paper, but also with our cutout element here. So this is the sheet that I've used for my pattern background paper. And you can see here I've got lots of different detailing on the corners and the edges that I could choose to use. And in this case, I used this section down here at the bottom so that I was able to get this really cool accent on the side, and then a portion of the side border here as well as the bottom. But of course you could have gone with this area over here too, or up at the top. So you've got a lot of different options with some of these pattern designs that have lots of detailing around the edges and the sides. So I've trimmed this down slightly smaller than the front of my card, and before gluing it down, I inked around the edges with the Vintage Rose ink pad, and that just gives me a little bit of definition there. Now for my focal, I'm using one of the cutouts, and it's this one here. And you can see I have some empty space, which I filled with rub-on images. And I'm using a couple of them between the 2 rub-on packs. and I'm overlapping them as well. Now, when I chose this design here, I really was spoiled for choice. I could have used any of these on this side of the sheet. If I flip this over, of course, I've also got lots of options for designs to simply cut out if I didn't want to add a rub-on to them. So choices, we love them for creating focals and different elements. Now again, with the rub-ons, I'm going between two of them. So I use this corner rose image here for this one, and of course also the words that you can see on here. And then from this set, I'm using the faux brick pattern on here, and I'm doing some overlapping. It's actually this one right here, sorry. I've overlapped that onto some of the text here, and then I've got this beautiful floral piece here. So let's take a look at how to apply a rub-on. Very simple to do. I'm just going to bring in a piece of plain white cardstock, and I've got a couple of rub-ons that I've trimmed out from the backing sheet. So when you do these, when you cut them out from your main sheet, you want to keep the liner on the image as much as you can before you place it down to wherever you're going to apply it. Then you will need to have a bone folder on hand, and this is what you're going to use to apply your image. So let's have a look here. I've got this gorgeous rose element, and I'm just going to pull the liner off of here and then position this in place. Maybe I want it to go just like that. And I'm going to smooth that down with my finger. I've got a little extra plastic piece here that I'm going to fold up, so I've got something to grab onto. And then I'm going to simply use that bone folder to burnish the image in place. So I'm going at an angle on the tip of this bone folder, and I'm just gently but firmly applying pressure on here. And I do want to make sure as I'm going around the outside edges that I get all of the detail on there. And then from here, gently and slowly, I'm going to pull this up and make sure that I've got all of that image, all of that image transferred. As you can see, if you didn't get the tip of your leaf, you can just put that right back down and burnish that in place. So there we go. Nothing left on there. So then what I'm going to do is take this little snippet of brick, and I'm going to add this here too. So I'm just going to put it right along here. It's going to go overlapping a little bit on the flowers. So you can definitely overlap your rub-on images, which is a nice way to combine two different elements like the geometric and the florals. This goes really nicely together. Okay, so I've got that there. I'm creating some depth. And then maybe I want to add the word wonderful, and again, kind of do some overlapping here. So the same process as before. I'm really hoping that I'm getting this straight on here. It's a little difficult to do it upside down. Okay, I'm going to place that down, and then again, just burnish this in place. So by applying one rub-on on top of another one, you're not going to lift up the original one. So that was what I had first been concerned about when I first tried this technique, and then I realized it worked really nicely. So I was quite happy about that. Okay, again, just sort of gently working this up. And there we go. So I've got my three elements layered on here together. I've got my floral piece, I've got my bricks, and I've got my word. So really nice and easy to do, and a fun way to add some extra dimension to your project. So after applying my rub-ons, I added the cutout piece to the card front with some foam tape, and then I've added the table chipboard piece, which is this one right here, and I've also got a butterfly image that just overlaps like so. Now, because I have my cutout up on foam tape, I also wanted to add foam tape to the table legs before placing it down. So you just want to make sure that everything will be even and you don't have anything kind of tilting off to one side. So that's for the front of our card, really quick and easy to do. Then for my card inside, I have a portion of this pattern paper, which I just think is so beautiful. I knew I had to use it somewhere. So I've trimmed this down slightly smaller than the inside of the card, and I did some inking around the outside edge. And all I've done to enhance this is simply added a flower pot chipboard piece, and then also this Just For You script dazzle. Now these are some of my favorite card making products, and because this font is just beautiful and it's so readable, the sentiments also are perfect for this theme, and they just tended to go really nicely with this. So this is the script dazzles in black. All I did was add one just going across along the top of this wall here, and I think it just works really nicely. Now this could actually be the card front as well. So again, really simple and a fun way to create depth and dimension and provide a nice sentiment with some pattern papers, chipboard, and embellishments. When I angle this card, I think you can see that gold foiling around the edges of the flowered background paper. Glue stick foiling is such a simple technique, and it is one of my favorites, especially with papers like these which have a shabby chic look. So let's have a look at the papers that I'm using, and then we'll go into the foiling demo. So first of all, I've covered the front of my card with this beautiful brick pattern paper, and then I've trimmed down my floral sheet, again slightly smaller than the front of the card, and also taking advantage of the portion of this gorgeous illustration on here so that I was able to have this really pretty large rose showing around my chipboard message. Now before I glued this piece down onto the front of my card, I added my foiling on there. So let's have a look at how to do this. Now the fab foil, this comes in a variety of different colors, and this is such a great example of how good things come in small packages. So you have one sheet of foil that's 4 inches wide and 39 inches long. It is such a great value because you really only need a little bit to get a fabulous look. So let's grab just a piece of plain white cardstock for this, and I've got a little snippet of my my gold foil. Now I will say, I'm going to show you a couple of examples here. I use this stuff until it's basically bald. So I've got a little baggie with all of these smaller pieces where some of the gold foiling has already been used, but you can use these until they're essentially clear. So that's what I do. Now I'm only using a simple glue stick for this technique, and all you need to do is just apply your glue along the edge of your cardstock. Now I'm doing this quite heavy-handed here so that you can see how this will stick. And then I just simply place my foil right on top and smooth that down. Smooth it down really well to make sure that this is stuck in place, and then you just need to let that glue dry. Now you may want to put it under something heavy. Sometimes I put it under a book or the plates of my embossing machine if that's not in use, and then just let that glue dry. Now here I've got another piece that I did just a couple of minutes ago. You can see I've used some of my, my leftover bits of foil, and let's pull this off, and you can see that gorgeous foiled effect on here. And just give that a pull, and off we go. So it depends on how much glue you're adding to the edges of your cardstock for how wide of a border you're going to get. So you could get quite a narrow border, or you could do something thicker like I've got on here. Either way, it's a really great way to add a nice distressed look to your project. And so from here, I've only needed to add in my chipboard sentiment as the focal, and then I've got a little bow tied in some gingham ribbon. And this is a pack that I reach for time and time again. Your pack will be much fuller, and you won't have little extra bows tied in there. Sometimes I just tie a bow to see which color will go better with my pattern papers. But a simple bow tied in there and then just glued right as an accent piece, and quite simple and easy to do. And then for my card inside, I have some pink cardstock from the Fairy Garden set, plus some of the rub-ons from the Writings and Roses rub-on set. So I'm going to show you this portion here because this is using this large element. I've got a portion of it here. I cut it apart and then added the other side over here too because I knew I wanted to have that cut out on there, and it's covering the portion that I snipped apart so that I've got a larger floral motif. And then I've got my word on here. I've got some gold foiling going around this cutout too, and then I have a nice large chipboard rose image to finish that off. Now I have another card here too, which is another example of the glue stick foiling. And I've added it just around the edges of this absolutely gorgeous watercolor look cardstock piece. And this creates a nice border of sorts to contrast with the patterned background paper. Now the focal is a layered oval die. This is using one of my all-time favorite die sets, the 12 oval and scalloped cutting dies from hot off the press. I've got a well-loved package of these dies here. So you've got your ovals and then you've got your nesting scalloped edge, which just creates a really nice focal. So the bird image is a rub-on from the Elements collection, which is this one right here. I think that is absolutely stunning. And so I've just put that onto some white cardstock, and then I accented it with a bow tied from some white ribbon from the 1/8 inch ribbon set. And then as a final touch, I've got the gold script dazzle here. Again, with these dazzles, I love them so much, and they just create such a pretty accent and go beautifully with the gold foiling around the outside edge. And then for my card inside, I have a cutout, and I've added the clock rub-on, and I don't know if you can see this, but the rub-on is actually overlapping the border of this cutout. So the cutout is glued straight down on the inside back of my card, and then the rub-on is going across that seam there, and it works really nicely. And then I've got another chipboard element here too, as well as another gold script dazzle. Our final card is a window card design with an embossed and stenciled and inked rose image showing through. So in addition to that beautiful stenciling and embossing, we've also got a fun window technique to take a look at. So 2 techniques in this card. Let's start with our stenciling, and I'll show you the supplies that I used to create this effect. Move this out of the way, and you can see I've got 2 coordinating products here, both from Paper Wishes. So I have the Beautiful Roses 3D embossing folder and the Coordinating Beautiful Roses stencils. Now with the stencils, you've got 2 stencils in this pack, and you've got one that will do the inking for the flower, and then the other one which will do the greenery. Now, of course, hot off the press, they're always going to give you a project idea as well as some written instructions on here. So you're never at a loss for inspiration, but I thought it would be really fun to give some additional inspiration for you today. So let's take a look at how to use that embossing folder. Now, I love embossing folders. I really like the technique itself and how it creates dimension as well as imagery on your cards. So these are nice, sturdy weight 3D embossing folders. There's a hinge up at the top, and so you'll just simply take your cardstock, nest it right up to that fold, make sure it's even, and then place this down. Now, I like to cut my cardstock about the same size as the embossing folder rather than having a really big piece that I'm running through my die cutting machine. So you'll have this positioned in place, run it through your die cutting machine. Please do have a look at your embossing machine, your die cutting machine instructions so that you make sure you've got the right plates on there. And then once you run that through, you will have a piece that looks like this. It might be a little bit tricky to see it with the camera, but trust me, there's some nice embossing on here. Now, I love white on white, and I could definitely leave this as is and use this on a card by itself. I think that would be gorgeous, but I think we want to add some color in here. So I'm going to grab the flower stencil, which is the one that looks like this. Now, I also want to have some ink on hand, and for the flowers, I'm using the appropriately named Vintage Rose. And of course, I also need to have a tool to apply the ink. So I've got my blending brush here. So all I need to do is position my stencil just right on top of my embossed flowers. And I do need to make sure that I've got those evenly aligned Now you can, if you want to, use some low tack tape to secure things in place. I'm going to live life on the edge here and just hold it in place. And then what I'll do is simply take my blending brush and I'm going to pick up some color from my ink pad. And this is a nice dye-based ink pad. It's going to give me some nice color. And I always like to start with a light touch at first because you can, of course, add more color. It's a little bit like a rub-on where you want to have a nice circular motion in here. Not a whole lot of elbow grease required because, of course, you can go back and add some more color on here if you want to. You can also do some blending if you have some different colors. If you really want to create some nice depth, you can do that as well. But it's really quite simple and easy to do. Okay, so if I lift this up, you can see I've got that gorgeous floral really easily inked on here. And I don't have to worry about the ink going in lots of other places there thanks to that stencil. Okay, and then what I can do is come back with the greenery portion of the stencil and the exact same process as before. Just want to get that into place. And for this, I'm going to use the pear green ink pad. And I'm going to use a different blending brush. So I've got several of these blending brushes, and I tend to just label them whether they're pink or green or some darker colors. I've got a special one for blue as well. So all of the colors that I use quite often when I'm inking, some browns and things like that, just to make sure that I'm not getting my brushes too dirty, although they're really easy to wash as well. So are these stencils too, by the way. So when you're done and you've got an inky stencil, you can just run it under some warm water and pat it dry, let it air dry, and then make sure it is dry before you put it into the packaging, and you're ready to go. So here we go, just adding some of that green in here. Again, as much or as little as you want. And then there we go. So we have a really nice soft pastel look, but quick and easy to do. Now I wanted to show you another piece that I made too, and this one with a little bit more inking on it, because I also decided to take my Delicata Gold pigment ink. So this is a different type of ink than our dye-based ink. Normally a pigment ink is a really quite juicy ink pad. This one has been loved for a very long time, so it's getting on the dry side, which means it is perfect for just hitting the raised edges of some of these flowers and leaves and creating a very beautiful kind of a gilded effect. Now that's if you've got a nice almost dry pigment ink. That is an easy technique to do. Otherwise, you're going to want to put those stencils in place and hit some of those raised areas as well. So a very simple technique to do, and one that I think is also a lot of fun. So I could have this as the front of my card, but I really like the idea of the image showing through the window, and I really like to have this beautiful pattern paper incorporated here too. So let's talk about the window process here. So if I have my blank card, what I'm going to do is first cover my card front with whatever pattern paper I want to have on the front, and then take my window shape. And in this case, I'm using one of my other favorite dies, the 10 square and scalloped die set. So I'm taking the square, I'm going to put this down with some of the Hunky Dory low tack tape, open up my card before I run it through my die cutting machine, and then I will have, voila, a piece that looks like this. So I've got my window die cut into that shape. Now I've got a scalloped border going around the outside edge, and this is made really simply by taking that same size of square and then its coordinating scalloped frame. Put the two of those together, tape them down, run that through your die cutting machine, and then you will have a piece that looks like this. And so then you can combine the two of these with just a little bit of glue. And position that around that frame, glue it in place, and away you go. So then you've got a really nice polished frame for your window. And then so here I've added the chipboard fence, and I've got a really sweet little bird here, a little bow tied in 1/8 inch ribbon, and then also the Believe chipboard element there. And this is our final card project of the day today. A very big thank you to our friends at Stamperia for today's collection. I found it absolutely beautiful to work with and so much fun too. A special thank you to you for joining me today. We're really glad that you're here, and we're so happy that you're a part of our Paper Wishes family. Do feel free to leave a comment. We love to hear what you think. Each item can be purchased separately, and you can see them below. However, we've also bundled them into a creative money saver just for you. For the money saver, just see this webisode on paperwishes.com. And if you're watching us on YouTube, have a look in the description box below this video. You'll find a link that will take you to our Paper Wishes webisodes page, and you can see everything I just mentioned. If you enjoyed our video today, we'd really appreciate a thumbs up. It helps people to find our channel. And don't forget to subscribe. We create 3 to 5 videos each week, so there's always something fun to inspire your creative spirit.